Dear viewers, ladies and gentlemen, we've just received breaking news and it is presented as follows. Ethiopian troops have just liberated Maalmeda, Cefarobit, Harbu and Makoy from the terrorist TPLF. A joint operation security forces led by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has captured the dispersed terrorist group in the areas where it invaded. The joint forces called upon the local people to fight and block the terrorist TPLF from taking looted properties. In another story, the United Ethiopian forces have taken control of several towns in a military operation carried out over the past 2 days, the State of Emergency Command disclosed. The goal of existential campaign is making sure TPLF is no longer a threat for the country, the command said. The command added in its statement issued this afternoon that the Ethiopian allied forces have taken control of various towns and their environs on the Shoa war front. According to the command, thousands of enemy forces have been surrendering following the joint military operation conducted in the invaded areas. The statement noted that the terrorist TPLF is engaged in disseminating fake information to cover up its humiliating defeats in the fronts and mislead its supporters by claiming that its forces have been making tactical retreats for strategic reasons. The desperate TPLF is creating havoc on social and religious institutions, looted and destroyed private properties, shot local residents, raped women, and committed atrocities, said the SOE. The group has defiled worship places, historical religious sites, and burned holy books. The terrorist group does not represent the people of Tigray, the statement indicated. Therefore, all those who are concerned for human rights should condemn these terrorist acts of the TPLF. The Ethiopian joint forces led by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed are advancing to liberate the remaining areas invaded by the group under the campaign for multinational unity. Now, 4 leading Ethiopian American civic organizations filed a complaint with the Department of Justice, New York Attorney's Office, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation against individuals who conspired to violently remove the democratically elected government of Ethiopia. They are Global Ethiopian American Advocacy Nexus, Worldwide Ethiopian Action Fund, Ethiopian American Development Council, and Unity for Human Rights and Democracy. The letter issued by the organizations stated that the United States Neutrality Act imposes a criminal penalty against any person within the U.S. Jurisdiction who conspires to overthrow a foreign government with whom the United States is at peace. On November 21, 2021, Peace and Development Center International Incorporated in the United States under Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code convened a Zoom meeting where individuals of Ethiopian origin and American and European diplomats who served in Ethiopia discussed the removal of the democratically elected government of Ethiopia, including through violent means. The so-called peace dialogue organized by PDCI is an extension of the misinformation and disinformation campaign intended to demonize and delegitimize the elected government of Ethiopia. The letter said, quote-unquote, "It is offensive to our shared democratic principles and is totally against the best interests of the peoples and governments of Ethiopia and the United States. We unequivocally condemn such acts and will continue to work with all Ethiopians and friends of Ethiopia to protect the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and unity of Ethiopia. We say no more to destabilizing forces attempting to disrupt the democratic reform process in Ethiopia."
I know the
Now, moving on, more than 300 civil society organizations based in Ethiopia have issued an open letter to the African Union, highlighting attempts being made by certain actors at an unconstitutional change of government. The letter, which is referred to President Felix Tshisekedi of the Democratic Republic of Congo, chairperson of the African Union, asks the African Union to condemn and reject any attempts at an unconstitutional change of government in Ethiopia, an African Union member state. The letter says Ethiopia was a founding member of the Organization of the African Unity, a member of the African Union, and has been the seat of this unique regional body since 1963. Article 3 of the Constitutive Act of the African Union provides that the objectives of the African Union include the promotion of democratic principles and institutions, and defending the sovereignty, territorial integrity and independence of its member states. Ethiopia has ratified the African Charter on Human and People's Rights and the African Charter on Democracy, Elections and Governance. Coalition of Civil Societies for Ethiopians comprises more than 300 civil society organizations based in Ethiopia and abroad. It aims to beam on and address contemporary challenges that the people of Ethiopia and the country might face. Since the establishment of the coalition, we have been carrying out several activities at the national and international levels to promote unity, brotherhood, and peaceful coexistence of the people of Ethiopia. Accordingly, 34, as civil society, we call on the United States and some European countries and the media to stop the unnecessary interference in our country. Article 13 of the African Charter guarantees the rights of citizens to freely participate in the government of their country through freely chosen representatives. On June 21, 2021, the Ethiopian people cast their votes in what was largely a free and fair election with an unprecedented turnout after decades of rigged elections that only served to consolidate a repressive regime's grip on power. The African Union Election Observation Mission, on its press statement of 23 June 2021, found out that despite some operational, logistical, security, political and COVID-19 related challenges, overall the pre-election and election day processes were conducted in an orderly, peaceful and credible manner. On 25 November 2021, a video was leaked in which a top leader of the rebel group met a group of former senior diplomats from Western nations to discuss the overthrow of the current Ethiopian government and its replacement by a transitional government. This is clear contempt by the diplomatic community towards the people of Ethiopia, including Ethiopians who did not vote for the current leader but accepted the results of the country's first democratic elections, the letter indicates. Quote-unquote, the citizens of Ethiopia and Africa wish to remind the African Union, seated here in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, of its obligation to prohibit, condemn, and reject any attempts at an unconstitutional change of government in an African Union member state, the letter said. Well, the viewers, we're going to stay on this issue, and to tell us more in this regard, I'm joined over the phone by the political science scholar, Dr. Jonas Adai. Doctor, good evening.
Good evening.
Let me ask you first this. What is the level of determinations exhibited by the organizations to voice Ethiopians' affairs at the global stage?
Very high level indeed. It is a right move in the right time, in the right direction. It very clearly indicates how citizens should be committed against this atrocious internal affairs, this involvement, and I would possibly say interference in a sovereign state. So this is a very high, extremely important engagement as well. Maybe if you have a follow-up question, I'll come back to that in detail.
Dr. Jonas, what measures, in your view, should be taken against such individuals, people plotting in secret and trying to remove a democratically elected government?
I think, of course, I have to disclaim and at the same time put caveats in place that I'm not a lawyer, but as someone who is engaged in part of political science, what's called peace and security studies, I take this one as high treason crime, which is aimed at very flagrant intervention in an independent state, and most important, again, manufacturing and making a sort of a state which could suit to Western style and made there and then import to Ethiopia and overthrow what's been already elected by popular voice, including, almost all Ethiopians, I could say, about 50 to 60 million, not only the 40 million already elected in 21st June. So it is a high treason, and definitely it is a crime not only against a sovereign state, but also, to me, it is another new colonialism coming back to recolonize Africa and the rest of particularly black world, thinking that there is still the upper hand of this imperialism to reign across the global south. So to me, this is a real crime which emanates from misguided, particularly American foreign policy and some Western nations as well. So I'm sure the civil societies have done what should have been done at the right time, as I said, in the right moment. And at the same time, I'm sure those peace-loving countries in the world, and particularly African Union and other, of course, intergovernmental organizations must unite and at the same time stand side by side with the Ethiopian government to rally behind Ethiopian people.
Indeed. Dr. Jonas Adaye, thank you so much for your ideas and have a great night.
And you too. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Welcome back. You're still watching Addis News Hour. The philanthropist Obang Metho says Ethiopian diaspora have lots of resources to share to their country at this critical time when the country is challenged by adversities. Referring government calls to the diaspora, let's get back home, ETV English asked him today what the diaspora can do for their country of origin. And Daniel Kasaun has the following report.
Recently, the Ethiopian diaspora are seen aggressively engaged in pertinent matters which are directly affecting their country. In this regard, the hashtag No More movement went viral and resulted in mass gatherings to denounce interventions against internal affairs of Ethiopia.
The No More movement is come out of Ethiopians saying that no more to injustice, no more to abuse, no more to colonization, no more to deception, no more to disinformation. Above all, no more to dehumanization of human beings.
In view of maintaining effects of the vibe, more is being expected from the diaspora, and the government has called them to come to Ethiopia in influx for coming Christmas holiday. The philanthropist Obang Metho says the Ethiopian diaspora have lots of resources to share to their country at this critical time when the country is challenged by adversities.
Ethiopians who live abroad, this is your home. You don't need anyone to tell you to come. You can come back home. And so to call and say that for Ethiopian New Year is coming and January 7, come back, well, that's a great thing. Because when you come here, you carry money with you. That money you buy some things. It go back to the economy. It go back to our people who are here. So being back here, if the Western other people say, get out, Ethiopian, and which is one thing I found the other day, which was very interesting, was when the Western are saying that Ethiopia is not safe to go. The Chinese Minister of Foreign Affairs came here.
Yeah.
He came here, nothing happened. He went back to the plane, he left. So in other words, it shows where the truth is. So the Ethiopians who have been called to come back home, yes, come back home.
Appreciating the remittance being gained currently from the Ethiopia's diaspora, he said much more can be contributed compared to the experience, money and other resources found among the communities.
Anyone who have an education abroad, come to Ethiopia and volunteer one time, even for 3 months, even 2 days. There are so many people who are suffering in years. There's a hospital that don't have any equipment. We have so many Ethiopian doctors abroad. There's many Ethiopian who don't have access to clean water. There's many Ethiopian. There's many Ethiopian that who don't have a quality education, teachers. You can bring the teachers. But in order to do that, we need to change the system, what we have in Ethiopia.
Around 1 million Ethiopian diaspora are expected to visit their country in the coming Christmas holiday.
Now turning our attention to the Ethiopian American who met, shook hands and boldly told President Joe Biden the situation in Ethiopia. Obala says not everyone in the Biden administration is against Ethiopia, cautioning Ethiopian Americans to try and work collaboratively with those like-minded policymakers. As far as he's concerned, the likes of Biden are unduly putting pressures on Ethiopia, as some paid TPLF lobbyists amidst them tend to have the upper hand. This came during Obala's stay with the OBN Horn of Africa English. Take a look.
Obala, who spent some time with OBN, said everyone in the Biden administration is not against Ethiopia, but some paid TPLF lobbyists tend to wheelchair Ethiopian government.
It's not everyone in Biden administration who is against Ethiopia. It's not every American who is against Dr. Abiy government, but it's the people who are being paid, is the people who are being used by those money which has been looted by TPLF for the last 27 years, and now they're using those people to speak so that they can silence Ethiopia. So it's difficult to predict, but I think by meantime, things will change, because in America, every 2 years there's election. And every 4 years there's election. So it's up to Ethiopian how they will react. So go vote. If you're Ethiopia in diaspora, go vote.
Obala is one of the survivors of the Gambela massacre in the early 2000s during the TPLF's iron-fisted rule. During the massacre, the TPLF targeted the Anuak in particular. Thousands fled to the Sudan and many more were killed as well as tortured. The aftermath provided the TPLF a fertile ground for land grabbing.
Since 2003, our tribe, especially the Gambela, has been massacred. Most of our youth has been called shifter. You get shot in downtown Gambela, you get shot in Pinudo, you get shot. The TPLF government been hunting down our people from either starting from Gok or Peno, going up to the border of South Sudan. So our tribe has been a target because our land is so fertile. We have a very rich river. We have a very rich oil in my region, which is Gambela.
Obala happened to be in an event where President Biden was shaking hands with people in opposition. Obala used the occasion to pinpoint the reality in Ethiopia.
I was able to talk to him in the side, whereby because he went greeting people, and then I blew up. So I have to bring up the genocide. And I have to bring up what happened in Ethiopia. He didn't give me specific what he stand, because he know where he's standing. So he should know. And my biggest question to his administration.
He also underscored that if Ethiopia fails, the African continent will fail as well. So that it is time for African countries to stand by Ethiopia.
The African country, because if Ethiopia fail, African continent is failing. South Sudan still need our help. Uganda still need our help. Sudan still need our help. And Ethiopian, if they don't think about that and don't think about the African Union, which is the headquarters in Addis Ababa, we will not have Africa if Ethiopia fails.
Referring to the hashtag No More movement, Obala told the OBN Horn Africa English that the initiative is getting wider publicity and attention. Thus, there is a need to keep up the momentum.
An Ethiopian US-based political analyst says America is intent to snatch the rights of Ethiopians by failing the Abiy Ahmed's government. He also explains the US and some West governments' strong interest in the Horn of Africa region, particularly Ethiopia, is because of its resource advantage. Sintayo Tambras tells you more.
Biniam Ketau, son of the famous Ethiopian NASA scientist, Engineer Ketau Jigu, is a political and historical philosopher. Talking to Obian Horn of Africa, he says the US is intent to snatch the right of the Ethiopian people as they try to weaken Ethiopian government.
The US intervention is to weaken the government in order to take away the right of the Ethiopian people. So we need to make sure that we make it very clear, both by our voice and frankly by our will, which includes military fight back, that doesn't happen. We need to defend Ethiopia on all fronts, and we need to push Prime Minister Abiy to do the same. There's no negotiation here. We either save Ethiopia completely and keep the government intact as a result, and then we continue making reforms. We make a better, more democratic Ethiopia, which is the best Ethiopian party in history and the best African representation of Black dignity in all time.
The coalition of the African nations in the fight against the current US imperialism on Ethiopia and the Horn region is important, Biniam underscored.
It's very good to see Eritrea, Somalia, and Ethiopia. And if you haven't caught it, even Djibouti is now joining in the struggle. This is important. This is important. So the more that we join together, the more we fix those sellouts, those loose threads. The more that Eritrea, the more that Ethiopia, the more that Somalia, the more that Djibouti work together, it's very easy to eliminate all of these, whether internal enemies or external enemies.
Biniam also describes the very act of US and other Westerners on Africa as neo-colonialism fashioned to exploit the resources of wealthy African states.
Africa is very wealthy in resource and in people, and neo-colonialism is all about figuring out how to weaken wealthy African nations in order to get those resources for cheap.
In addition, US and some Western governments' desire for hegemony over the Horn region, particularly Ethiopia, is because of its resource advantages.
And my father himself gave lots of lectures about the resources of Ethiopia in particular and Africa in general. And the reason why Western governments, particularly the United States, want to intervene and cause mayhem in places like the Horn of Africa is because it's strategic militarily, but also there's resources. There's oil in the Ogaden. There's probably oil off the coast of Somalia, right? We obviously have gold. We obviously have diamond. We also obviously have all kinds of resources. So a weakened Ethiopian state also makes a weakened Horn of Africa, which makes it easy for outside influences through corporations, through governments, to exploit African nations, Ethiopia in particular, and it means they get access to the resources cheap.
Many in the African continent and in the various networks of Black people globally, as well as friends of Ethiopia, are voicing their concern against US and some other Western governments' act of neo-colonialism on Africa and particularly Ethiopia.
Now, French families have landed in Paris after France repatriated some of its nationals from the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa. A French foreign ministry official said they chartered special flights to repatriate their nationals last week. France urged its nationals to leave Ethiopia without delay. But CGTN underscored that many of the French nationals who arrived in Paris described Addis Ababa as generally calm when they left.
We were told to leave and that we didn't have a choice. It was the last flight, and if not, we had to put on paper that the French state could not be held responsible for us. We left everything behind, our house, we have a life there, we have jobs there, and we get here but we don't know where to stay. I'm paid in Ethiopian currency. I don't know what to give the children. But in Addis Ababa, everything's going fine. Honestly, it's all fine. I don't understand.
Mais à 10, tout va bien. Sincèrement, tout va bien. Je comprends pas.
Parce qu'il y a beaucoup d'incertitudes.
There's lots of uncertainty, and we're not too sure what's going on. 5 to 6 days ago, the rebels seemed very close to Addis Ababa, but we've had little information the past few days. And the French embassy asked us to go home as fast as possible, so we followed their instruction. Some of my colleagues have decided to stay, but it's a small minority. The great majority of my colleagues have come back to France.
And finally, one of the pro-Ethiopian US-based journalists, Hermel Argawi, accused Twitter of targeting and suspending pro-Ethiopian voices. Simon Tesfamariam, a target and a pro-Eritrean activist and supporter of Ethiopia, also expressed disappointment over the unwarranted action taken by the Twitter. Twitter has disabled the accounts of at least a dozen Ethiopians and Eritreans and their related groups. The accounts targeted by Twitter are best known for their support for Ethiopia's and Eritrea's governments and for articulating condemnations against the terrorist TPLF. Breakthrough News editor Rania Kalek stays with the victims. Ethiopian-American journalist Hermel Argawi and Eritrean Simon have condemned the blocking of several Ethiopian Eritrean accounts. These accounts also recently helped promote the #NoMore campaign against the West. Hermela Argawi requested there has to be a careful consideration of what exactly understand the context of what that conversation. Take a listen.
#NoMore is not controversial. I mean, there's a reason why a lot of people around the world are participating, not just Ethiopians and Eritreans. It's this sense that there are all these wars that happen that could be avoided when you really look at what led up to them. A lot of that has to do with false narratives leading up to the war, during the war, that fuel those conflicts. And there's a lot of countries that have been a victim of that. A lot of people, a lot of communities that have been a victim of that sort of approach. So it's really on behalf of peace. It's not against anybody, including Tigrayan Ethiopians. It's not even against any of the what appear to be pro-TPLF activists. I mean, we respect their right to say what they're saying, even though we believe a lot of it's not founded on evidence and has been debunked since the narrative was launched the same time as the war. But, you know, when you're really shutting down accounts, I think there has to be a careful consideration of what exactly you're shutting down. You need to understand the context of that conversation. And on a more optimistic approach, my hope is that as Twitter learns a little bit more about context, since much of the conversation was dominated by the #Tigray genocide folks for much of the year.
Simon Tesfamariam, a target and pro-Eritrean activist and supporter of Ethiopia, has also the following to say.
This individual stated that they were going to shut down trends in all of Ethiopia. And we saw some very abnormal behavior where sometimes the NoMore would rise to the top, sometimes NoMore would fall to the bottom. And what this suggests is that from the very beginning, that there was censorship from Twitter. And so what we see is this is part of a second wave of censorship, a crackdown on activists who are vocal, who are speaking up, just people that are trying to get information and asking questions about a narrative that was started a year ago about the war in the northern part of Ethiopia, specifically the #Tigray genocide. And so asking questions through the use of another #NoMore apparently is a problem.
You have been watching Addis News Hour, and now a quick reminder of the top stories. State of emergency says war against TPLF reverses existential threat of Ethiopia. And philanthropist Metho calls on Ethiopian diaspora to contribute more to their country. And with that, we come to the end of today's stories. Many thanks for watching us. Bye-bye.
Hello and welcome, I'm Tafara Gadamu. A number of things have changed here in Ethiopia.